Hey, it's Keisha Lance Bottoms. Thank you all for tuning in to my YouTube channel. This has been so much fun for me in so many ways. It's been liberating. It's been a really long time, probably decades, since I've been able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And that's not to complain. It's just to say that's sometimes how life is. For me, going to law school at 21, practicing law at 24, like there was always a set path on how I needed to do things, the schedule I need to do things on. And now I just get to be in the flow. And this is something that I've always wanted to do. And it really has been about taking control of my life and being able to just show more of who I am. When I was on a major network, I got asked lots of questions and I got to answer exactly what I was asked. But now with this YouTube channel, I just get to talk about what I want to talk about when I want to talk about it. So one of the things I talked about was imposter syndrome, and I've gotten a lot of feedback and a lot of questions. So again, just playing around with the content here, looking forward to you all sharing more about what you like, what you want to hear more about. But I got a lot of questions about imposter syndrome. So I'm going to take some time today, go through some of the comments, pull out some of the questions, and hopefully I can give you some more information on how I dealt with imposter syndrome and what going through that process has been like for me in overcoming imposter syndrome. Let's see. I was really surprised when I made the post on imposter syndrome. I thought that this was something that would just resonate with women, particularly African American women. And the feedback that I've gotten is that a lot of people are struggling with this. This is not just about women of color. It's not just about women. Gotten a lot of feedback from men in the comment section and just people reaching out to me personally saying that they've struggled with this too. Not always attaching the name of imposter syndrome, but just feeling like you're going into a room and somehow you don't belong there. That your hard work has not been enough to get you in this room, and that you feel like you literally are an imposter and people are gonna figure you out and say, what are you doing at the table? When the reality is the fact that you are sitting at the table means that you have earned that seat at the table. These rooms aren't just open to any and everybody. And I'm speaking of it from my perspective, and I've been in some really big rooms, probably the biggest of all being the Oval Office inside the White House. But for somebody else, it may be sitting around the table, with your managers at your company, or being invited to dinner with a group of people that you don't think you deserve to be at the table with these people. So no matter what your profession is or your personal situation, this is something I'm learning that a lot of people have dealt with. And it's not just women, but men too. So I'm really glad that it has resonated with a lot of people. My son, Lennox, is like, you love talking about imposter syndrome. Why are you always talking about imposter syndrome? But the reality is, I didn't know it had a name. And I thought that it was just me dealing with these insecurities, but a lot of people deal with these insecurities. And I'm glad that the post that I made has allowed people to at least attach a name to it and see that you're not alone. And like with so many people, I'm a work in progress. I have to constantly remind myself I belong. And I remember watching Michelle Obama talk about this and how you go into these big rooms and feeling out of place, and this recognition that these people just showed up somewhere at some point too for the first time. And hearing her say it and hearing her call it out, like, you belong at the table. If you're at the table, you belong at the table, was very helpful to me. So I hope in the same way that talking about it here will be helpful to someone else too. So I was asked about what boundaries I've had to set in showing up for work and at home. And that's been really, really hard, especially being a public figure. One thing that just always really annoys me is when people ask for pictures in a bathroom. I don't mind taking a picture, but when we're standing in a bathroom, that just feels super, super personal. And I'm not somebody who likes to tell people no, but I've also learned that if I don't protect my space, then I can't look to anybody else to do it. And so, for example, when somebody will ask for a picture in the bathroom, I'll say I'll be happy to take a picture, but not standing in front of the bathroom stall. And that sounds like maybe a silly example, but I think it really is more indicative of just how you set your boundaries. What makes you comfortable? What makes you uncomfortable? I remember years ago reading this book called The Gift of Fear, and it gave an example of someone being in an elevator and not feeling comfortable with this person in the elevator, but not wanting to make that person uncomfortable by stepping off of the elevator. And as I remember from this book, this woman ended up being attacked. But because she was more interested in not making somebody else uncomfortable, it put her physically, her safety at risk. And so I always try and think of that now. What are my boundaries? And it may not necessarily make sense to other people or may be offensive to other people, but we have to protect our space. And whether that's our physical space or our mental and emotional space, that's important for us to do, because what we know is when you're not protecting yourself physically, obviously you're putting your body at risk, but when you don't protect yourself emotionally and mentally, that also puts your body at risk, because we know that women have very high rates of dying from heart attacks. A lot of people think of breast cancer, which of course disproportionately impacts especially African American women. But the last stats that I saw, heart disease, heart attacks were the #1 killer of African American women. So it's important that we protect our mental, emotional space so that we can also protect our physical space. Oh, another thing, I have to be very mindful of when I'm out with my family, and especially when I'm with my husband. People very well intentioned will want to take a picture, but then they unintentionally be disrespectful to my husband. And I have to say, hold on a second, this is my husband. Because it doesn't matter that I'm a public figure, that's still my husband. And sometimes I have to demand that people be respectful of his space. You know, we always want to be polite with people and always happy that people are excited when they want to take a picture, but sometimes people just don't think. And I've even had people push my kids out of the way. I'm not very nice when that happens. I'm like, hold on a second. Like, you just stepped in front of my daughter. So again, protecting space, but also not just being protective of my boundaries, but protective of the boundaries of the people who I love who are around me. The first time that I really began to appreciate the value of my law degree was when I ran for office, when I actually was on city council, because then I began to see that as a lawyer, you really do think differently. You process differently. You think 10 steps ahead. You think through the what ifs. And sometimes that can be paralyzing, because sometimes, what do they call it? Paralysis by analysis. But I began to appreciate just the way that lawyers are trained is very different. And for me, it helped keep me out of a lot of trouble. Not that I ever intentionally wanted to get in trouble, but I would always ask 10, 15 steps ahead, and I just analyzed things differently. So it was extremely helpful to me. Also, just the attention to detail. When you go to law school, you have these very firm deadlines. If you don't turn your paper in by X time, you know, you get an F on the paper, and just that kind of training has just been helpful to me in general. And just in terms of running for office, I don't want anybody to think that you even have to have a professional degree or a degree at all to run for office. Running for office really should be for all of us, because when you are fortunate enough to be elected, then you are representing your community. You're bringing the cares and concerns of your community to the table and implementing laws and policies that literally can change the lives not just of your family, but everybody in your neighborhood and beyond. And that was the privilege for me, that I had this array of experiences, from growing up at times in a middle class, upper middle class family, to at times watching my mom struggle as a single parent when my dad went to prison. And when you show up as an elected official, for me, it was removing that mask. This is point by Paul Laurence Dunbar: we wear the mask that grants and lies, that hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. When I removed that mask and really began to show people, this is the other side of who I show up looking like everything is together. This is who made me. This is why I care about certain things. It freed me to do better on behalf of everybody I was elected to represent, because I could talk about what it was like going into a prison. I could talk about the impact of cash bail bonds on people in my family who would, I've had family members get arrested for very minor traffic offenses and not being able to pay those fines, and then this spiral that takes place. You can't pay the fines, so you can't get out of jail, so then you lose your job, and the whole nine. So these everyday experiences made me, I believe, a better elected official. And whatever your experiences are, whatever it is you care about, that's what our elected officials are supposed to represent for us. We sometimes have people who are so far removed from everyday life that they just really don't understand what people want and need. So it is for everybody. Don't think that you just have to have a law degree to run for office. Bring who you are, the fullness of who you are, to the table, and I guarantee you your community will be better for it. This is great, having an opportunity to answer questions for you. So please subscribe to It's Keisha Lance Bottoms on YouTube. Keep the comments and questions coming. I can't promise that we're going to get to them all, but I will do my best, and we'll keep giving you more content. We're going to have some fun. We're going to do some cooking. We're going to do some fun things, and we're going to talk about some serious things. But at the end of the day, it's just all about us being better, because we are a community of people, whether we are physically living together around each other or just interacting with each other on YouTube. So stay tuned. Pass the word on. Hope you like what you see. Keep bringing me the questions and comments.